think I actually agree with most of what Kyo said, aside from the like ridiculous vegan take. Everything else is basically crap.
Yes.
Fair.
Just make it clear, right? Vegan hate will always be allowed on this channel. All right, like that's the type of bigotry that I sign up for. All right, let's go on.
Oh my God, yes.
Go on. New Zealand has proposed taxing farmers for cow burps. Cow burps are a leading cause of methane being released into the atmosphere. The money collected will be put back into the industry, though through various means, like funding research to manage farming-related methane releases. Is this a good idea? Should consumers slash producers be incentivized through taxes and similar remedies to use healthier slash greener products? Do you feel that you feel the same when we were talking about other vices such as cigarettes and alcohol? Okay, yeah. So you heard it right. New Zealand is proposing. I don't think it's passed yet, as far as I understand. To just have a tax on farmers for cow burps. Just like you've seen, like taxes against like polluters in general, right? Like in like big industries, when it's being belched out by like machinery, they're considering doing so for cows. And they want to apparently put the money to some sort of good use. But curious what you guys think on that idea in itself, and the idea of like managing consumers' behavior through taxation or some other like monetary incentive. All right, we'll start with our friend Lactoid.
So, and this is, I know it's about New Zealand, but I'm going to talk about this as it relates to the U.S. because that's really where the only policy conversation matters. And in the U.S., I think the issue is that it's not necessarily that we're not taxing cows enough, but I think the U.S., like a lot of countries, subsidized meat production too much. There's been a couple studies in this that attempt to measure what a pound of hamburger would cost without subsidies. On the low end, it's about $35 per pound. And a high end, it's over $50 per pound of hamburger. Compare that to what it is now, which is nowhere even near that. I don't think it's a surprise why Americans eat so much meat and why there's so much cow production. I think that as long as meat production is fairly priced in, there's no reason to crush the industry. And I think you'd have a much less of a problem with this. But I think the whole issue right now is that it's not fairly priced in because of government intervention. I don't think that really know that the issue of cow farming in New Zealand is significant enough to be a climate change issue.
Hey, thank you, Scott.
Yeah, so this is an example of central planners not understanding economics, right? Um, Number one, it's not as bad as, let's say, what they're proposing in Canada or what they're currently doing to the Dutch farmers, right? Where they're trying to destroy the entire industry outright, as a means of just drastically reducing the amount of food production in the world and starving millions of people to death. This is more of like a kind of a slow nudge, right? We'll begin to tax you, and we promise we'll use that money towards, sustainable developmental practices, et cetera. Even though, of course, New Zealand is much better in their management of methane than other countries are. What this is going to do, if you have a basic understanding of economics, is that it's going to price certain people out of the market. It's going to reduce food production. This is the biggest problem with central planners, statists, socialist types, is that they always assume that production is like this magical thing that just happened because of the industrial revolution, instead of recognizing that the freer the market, the more production you get, and that the more you begin to regulate and fuck with that market, the more you're going to reduce the incentive towards production. So what this is going to do is this is going to cause food prices to increase and starve people. But this is all part of the plan, right? And by the plan, I don't necessarily mean eat the bugs and live in the pod, eat the soy. I just mean that they themselves state that this is, one beginning step towards reducing all of their emissions by 47% by 2050. So it doesn't stop here, right? The idea is to boil the frog in the pot and say like, hey, we're just going to increase taxes a little bit, but don't worry, it's going to go towards, research and things like that. And then, it's going to be 25% by 2030. Don't worry. And this is just to get you used to the idea that they can come and they can steal your resources and they can blame you for climate change, even though they're not going to have any significant impact on climate change. All they're going to do is starve people, kill people, and offshoot the climate change to other countries that will be willing to step in with less production and with more pollution. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a horrible, horrible thing. And the people that suggest it, their names should be public, and they shouldn't be allowed to leave their house without being harassed by every citizen.
Taking it to a whole another extreme, huh?
Scott, never shy,
I am
never
an anarchist.
ever shy.
Like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, fuck these people.
This is true.
I agree.
All right, Kyo-san, please.
It's funny
A
because,
New
like,
Zealander adjacent, right? So you'll have special insight into all of this.
Not really. I was literally going to take. I'm actually funny. It's funny because like the line that I'd like prepared, like the list of stuff that I pre-prepared, was already like cut off at the knees by Lactoid. I was going to say that like we already subsidize meat to an extreme amount, and that these taxes are probably like getting there halfway. Like we probably can't just drop those subsidies. People's like current diets aren't prepared for that or set for it. But that being said, like people probably need to switch to plant-based diets. Not only is it like incredibly unethical to eat animals, which it is, by any moral set of standards, and anyone who's saying otherwise is just coping. It's also the case that it's pretty bad for you, and we should probably be switching to those diets. It's bad for us, it's bad for the planet, so we're probably switching to those diets anyway. And that getting like a tax in there is probably a way to ease those landings in instead of just removing those subsidies immediately, because meat production is incredibly costly. It's incredibly poor for energy conversion. It's pretty poor for protein conversion. All of these things. It's just like a really bad way to get food into us because we're taking from things to eat, things to eat to our stomachs, right? Which is just really bad. In terms of like land efficiency, it's bad. In terms of food efficiency, it's really bad. In terms of being bad for the planet, it's bad. In terms of being bad for you, it's bad. It's already incredibly subsidized. It probably needs to change. People's diets need to change already. The day that like the alternatives to meat incredibly price it out is the day that the world becomes a better place. Now they're easing that in, which is probably good, but it's already the case that these things are cheaper. The subsidies are just keeping it afloat. So I would probably say remove the subsidies, not immediately, but you need to ease people into changing their diets because currently it's just too costly.
Okay, thank you.
When it's simple.
And we'll yell at you about the vegan thing later on. Blaze.
I mean, I'm just right. Stay mad.
Yeah, this is just another attack on farmers because of all the federal regulations that farmers already have, especially here in the United States when it pertains to wages, some federal payments that these farmers have to pay to the federal government. It's just another attack on farmers, and it's actually gonna prevent them from producing more food for people who actually need it. And what I've read a lot of times when the federal government came to picture when it came to farmers, production always lowered or the cost for production increased, thus hurting the farmers and having them work more hours and more time in order to produce this much food, plant these many crops for some businesses. So this is just another attack on farmers, and this whole they got to tax them in order to bring it for a better good. That's just a load of crap that the government always told. Because every time they brought up something about tax, someone, especially the middle low class, the working class people, always got hurt. It's just another way for the government to just pretty much steal more money out of these farmers. And that itself is a crime. And the fact that more people don't see it this way, it's just asinine that they will take this money away from the working class farmers and put it into the government for, I'm guessing, some stupid reasons, some stupid crazy reasons. But yeah, that's my take on it.
Jason, Society.
Yeah, we actually subsidize farmers quite a bit. Like they receive mass amounts of subsidies. To say that they're getting money taken away from them, they get a ton of money from our government. I have no problem taxing vices. I am a meat-eating person. I love eating meat. I love steak. I like big-ass fat ribeyes. They're fucking delicious. I understand that I need to change my habits if this planet's going to last, and I have no issues with that. If taxing some of these vices helps to curtail the use of or the practice of having meat or having things that continue to perpetuate the demise of our planet, I'm totally fine with that. I think it's got to be eased in. I don't think it's something that you could just like hit overnight and all of a sudden like shock people with it. But I think over time, yeah. And I think there's going to be alternatives. We've got lab grown meat. We've got other alternatives coming out, and I think if you bring up the taxes on par with the alternatives that are coming out, I think you're going to be fine. I don't see an issue with it.
Okay.
I'm good with it.
Oh, awesome. And we have Amanda.
Yeah, as far as it goes, I think that definitely my take probably falls somewhere in the middle on it because I do agree that, especially, I know you guys are all going to complain, but I have to. I I was eating a vegan diet until recently, so I understand the take as far as the motivation, and I do think for climate change and everything else and distribution of food, I think I understand it. But at the same time, having you know danced with the devil's ribs or whatever and 100% jump back into that world, I think that when you really look at like meat intake and farmers overall, it's always going to be challenging for farmers have always had subsidies 100%. It's historical, like crop yields and stuff, like you can't predict for that in the same kind of labor industry as you can for others, which is why like the government like keeps an eye on it, and it's in the best interest of the country to make sure that their people are fed. But at the same time, if we were to like kind of redistribute the land and make sure that like, because there's a lot of land that goes into animal agriculture, and that's also a huge concern, like that could have an impact as well. Like Americans probably don't need to eat as much meat. I think that that's probably safe to say. But at the same time, I think it might be advantageous to redistribute the meat across the world because there's a lot of places that are actually struggling with poverty and food inequality. And the reason why meat is advocated for is to help sort of increase the caloric intake of that individual, to like just put some more meat on their bones so that like they're better in society. If you have a society that's like hungry and starving, you're not going to have a lot of production in any sort of case. Like just look at Yemen. Like it's pretty obvious.
Thank you so much. Finally, Doobie, please.
Yeah, I think the answer is obviously yes. They should be incentivized through taxes or whatever to make healthier choices for themselves and for the planet. If that means taxing cow burps or cow farts or putting some farmers out of business, I think it's fine. I'd say fuck the farmers. I think I actually agree with most of what Kyo said, aside from the like ridiculous vegan take. Everything else is basically crap.
All right, yes. Just make it clear, right? Vegan hate will always be allowed on this channel. All right, like that's the type of bigotry that I sign up for. All right, let's go on.
Oh my God, yes. I just want to make one thing real clear while we get started. I would kill 1 million puppies to save one baby Hitler. There you go. That's my moral framework.
There we go.
Because puppies are not moral agents. Fuck.
Hey, what kind of puppies?
One
though?
human.
Like, are they really
Any-
cute
the
or they're like ugly
cutest, the
puppies?
cutest kind. Not anything
I mean,
that
if they're
is a
like
pet.
Bruno's pit bulls, I don't know if I'd be okay with that because I really like those
Like,
dogs. They're cute.
if there's someone's pet, then it has inherent value to the human. So at a certain point, like the damage that you're doing is like, I don't know that it's necessarily worth saving a baby Hitler, right? Like it begins to like add up to a moral agent because of the effects on humans. But even still, if given a choice between saving baby Hitler and pushing a button and killing 1 million puppies, I will watch them whimper as they slowly get gassed.
You really like that really
So
bad art that
I'm
Hitler did,
curious,
eh?
Scott. What's the trait that you're applying to puppies that would make them non-moral agents that, when applied to humans, wouldn't do the same
Name the
thing?
trait, okay?
Name the trait, buddy. Let's see it.
Yeah, so I think my entire moral framework is based upon a conscious being being able to have inductive and deductive reasoning and make valid propositional statements. Once they're capable of argumentation, then they are deserving of rights. It doesn't matter if they're an AI, doesn't matter if they're an alien, doesn't matter what they are.
God, that would,
as
it
it
would exclude
stands-
lefties, though. You can't do
I
that.
can't
Yeah.
wait for you to tell me that you would punt 2-year-olds into the ocean.
Well, no, so that's a Bayesian analysis of the fact that they are human beings and they belong to a category of people that are capable of making valid propositional statements, inductive and deductive reasoning, and they're appointed a guardian as caretaker of their rights until they're capable of doing so. So there you go.
So-
That's why dogs are not
So if you
moral
had
agents.
people, who couldn't make those inductive or deductive reasonings, we could just cut them up and eat them, no problems, right?
Yeah, no, I already answered that question with children.
No, I'm talking
right?
about people who
They-
will
they
not
need a
and do
guardian.
not. Pardon?
They
But they don't. They
need a
won't.
Wait,
guardian.
why do they get a guardian? Why don't dogs and cats get a guardian?
They,
Because
They
because they
do,
don't belong to a
arguably.
species that's capable of propositional statements. Valid
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
propositional.
well, I'm like,
could've
maybe
done
you
that.
But in
like
that
have
case,
someone
their
who was
ability
like,
to their ability
Sorry.
to reason isn't the reason you won't eat them. Then it's something else, right?
Well, they just don't have rights.
yeah, but rights are something constructed, right?
No, rights are objective.
yeah, for us, by us. Man, it's FUBU.
Where
But
do
for
where do
us.
they come? Where if they're objective, where do they come from?
From the laws
Yeah.
of logic.
From the laws of logic.
No.
Yeah. Yes.
Human rights is only existed since the French Revolution and onwards. Once we started to declare the third estate as people, like human rights has not been existing
not
like
tr-
throughout millennia.
Amanda, do you think bacteria didn't exist before Louis Pasteur?
Do you think
Yeah, we
that
discovered human rights.
We discovered
He-
them. Yes. We discovered human rights through philosophy.
they were created in the French Revolution to argue for the fact that you didn't need a king anymore and that the citizens needed to have inherent rights and they shouldn't and taxation
It doesn't
was a
matter.
huge-
It doesn't matter. Rights are objective through the laws of logic and through
then
argumentation.
then why doesn't everyone have them like across the world?
People's
who
rights
decides
can be
what's a
They
right
do.
and
violated.
They're
what
just
isn't
not
a
being
right?
enforced, right? Like I'm
Right,
gonna guess
right.
that Fabian would say that rights that aren't enforced still exist for some reason, right?
I don't
Even
think
though
that
there's no
rights
functional
exist in the
difference.
same
Even
context.
though there's no functional difference, yeah.
But who
Rights don't
determines
exist in the
what
same.
is and isn't a right?
Yeah, and it depends on the area. Like people are not asking these same kind of questions in other parts of the world as they are in North America and in Europe.
They just haven't discovered
this
it,
is
right? It's like discovering a new technology.
I don't
right? They
care,
haven't
right?
discovered
Yeah.
the
Like
rights.
you can
And
discover right.
Fabian's absolutely correct. He's certain that he's absolutely discovered the right thing this time, and there isn't any quest that supersedes it. He's certain. He's absolutely certain because it goes by the laws of
I'm
logic,
certain-
right?
I'm certain that Hans Hermann Hoppe discovered them in 1986. Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask
was
you a
able
question
to-
because I
was able
alluded
to
to it just then,
Quantify them.
and I'm going to do some boring philosophy shit for like 20 seconds. I apologize to the chat. Okay.
Yeah, no. I
Um,
took the bait from your vegan dumb shit because I just thought it'd be fun.
If it is so we have like something that we know is plus, right? We know that 1 + 1 = 2 and 2 + 2 = 4, right? Some function called plus. Yeah.
Okay.
There also exists something we haven't discovered yet, a function called quas, right? And quas follows every single rule of plus, except at 999,334 plus 3,976, it actually equals 1, right? So, but because we haven't got to that point, we don't know. How do you know at any point that you're doing plus and not quas?
Well, I mean, I would need you to ground that in logic. I need you to prove
That is
quas.
grounded. That is fully grounded from premise to premise. This is a very,
Well,
very
right,
famous
but you just
philosophical position.
right. But I mean,
I need to
is
use
it?
an
I'd have
exact
to look
example.
into it. I mean, you can send me someone that has a logical proof for quas, and I'll check it out. But I'm not going to.
I'm just saying, like, how do you know at any
doesn't
point? You
seem
don't
to
need to know the
engage in
logical.
reality?
You don't need to know the logical proof. I'm just saying, like, you don't know at any point that you do a plus that you're not doing a plus or a quas, right? It's like a very famous problem.
Yeah,
that was brought up by Wittgenstein and then followed up by.
But again,
LCS
if there
laws?
is no, if yeah, sure. How do I know that I'm not engaging in something wrong, right? If I haven't discovered.
No,
the
how do you know
moral
you're not
action to be
engaging
wrong?
in some rule and not the superior rule, right?
Right, but again, like
Because you don't.
I don't know what you're talking about, right? But I have
Well, neither do
discovered
you.
something.
The point
have,
here is that
like-
you don't,
Well,
right? So you
Cassie,
can't
neither
say
do
for
you.
certain that you
No,
have some
but you're
rule that
saying-
exists when there could
You're
be some
saying that there
superior
could
rule
be a
that's actually in
something-
play.
Right. You say that there
Declaration.
theoretically could be something, right? But that supersedes it.
Yep.
I mean, I presume maybe it's possible that there is some theoretical rule that supersedes it, but it wouldn't make those actions justifiable, right? It would
No, it
just
wouldn't.
it would
So
No,
you
listen,
don't know.
it-
You're
no,
acting
li-
as
no,
if
no,
you have
no,
like
no,
an objective
listen.
knowledge when you don't.
Yes, I do, right? So what I'm saying is it it couldn't supersede and make an unjustifiable thing that has been proven to be unjustifiable justifiable, right?
No,
But the
you're saying a
only
justifiable thing could
undis-
be unjustified though. Something that's
Right,
outside the rule could be
right.
inside.
Yes. So some things that are outside of the rule that haven't been proven to be unjustifiable could later be proven to be
And
unjustifiable.
those people would have been
despite
wrong all
me
along, right?
presuming. Who's those people?
So anyone who's like within that set of people. So like say like we might have thought that actually no, I'm going to use a real world example. Like we originally thought that like black people didn't have agency, right? Like we didn't think that like they were deserving of human rights until we realized later on that we were wrong, right?
I never
now,
thought that. I don't know who we.
You
people.
didn't know, but
Be
people. in the
careful with
past
your
did.
you people.
Sorry, no. I didn't mean you people. I mean you people as in Americans, so like subhuman people. I'm joking.
Okay.
No, but like the point here is that there's some rule that could be superseded by some other rule, right? And you just saying like this follows from the laws of logic. Well, it doesn't seem like, and we've always had them, and then it always will be this case. You don't know that for certain. You cannot know that, right?
The only things that I know for certain are things that are proven to be unjustifiable, right?
And
the
this is-
things that are
and-
within the
Mhm.
domain, things that are within the domain of possible justifiability could later be proven to be unjustifiable. And so you're right. There could be a moral philosophy that is able to use the laws of logic that can objectively deduce at some point that, let's say, killing cows, for example, would be an
Mhm.
unjustifiable action, right? And I've yet to see that. I've yet to see anyone present that. And you're laughing at the idea of objective morality, anyways.
I am.
Or
I'm an
morality
anti-realist,
derives from the laws
specifically.
of logic. Yeah.
Yep.
So like it kind of doesn't matter, and you don't really have a leg to stand here, anyways.
No,
The
I do.
original argument was that there is no possible moral system that could justify and or could allow for individuals to eat meat, and anyone arguing against that is just coping. And I'm
Yep.
presenting you with one that does indeed do that.
Yeah, so-
and you've yet to defeat that. You're just playing.
Well, because you didn't answer my question before.
you made
So
a
the set
ridiculous
of-
statement.
So I'll
No,
give you a little bit.
So
I'll give you a little bit
point-
more rope to do this, but like I want to let other people in, like, and to have
I'll be
like a.
2 seconds, just because I want my.
I just want to
previous
kill.
question
I just
answered.
want to kill puppies to say baby Hitler. All right.
Yeah, sure. So the point the original point that I asked is that your set of rules, when applied to a human, right, that they're not able to engage in deductive or inductive logic through some external mean. Maybe they were born with a defect. Maybe they came through some injury that would necessitate that they can't do that anymore. They're fine to eat, right? So they could be put to the intelligence level of like they could be put to the intelligence level of an animal and can't engage in deductive or inductive reasoning, even though you can't know that about animals because you don't speak their language. But I'm going to assume that you just guess that that's the case, and that it also, and then we'll run on that premise, right? So a human,
Right. If we discover
is
that dolphins are capable of this at a later date, right, then my logic applies to them.
No, I'm talking about like, yeah, I'm just saying that like I'm agreeing. I'm just saying I'm running with that premise, even though it couldn't necessarily be the case that you could know that for certain, right? What I'm saying is if those properties were applied to a human, right? Say that human was in an accident or they were born with a defect or something along those lines, we are fine to eat those people.
Okay, so
Yes?
I've already answered this question twice, and I don't even know
You
why
just
you're
said
here to
we just
debate
assign them a
anything.
guardian, right? But you haven't answered the question, like, why would we assign them a guardian if we know for the fact that they can't do those things?
I did answer the question twice already. But you're an anti-realist, so everything you says is meaningless anyways because you're not.
Yeah, that's fine. You
grounded
can
in
just
reality.
like make an ad hom just to make your own position safer. But
But no, I've literally already answered this question.
Yeah, so
twice. I'll
repeat
do
it then,
a
just
third
because I'm
time.
slow. I'm deaf.
I said when you do a Bayesian analysis, they belong to a category of individuals that have attained human rights.
So it's not.
Thus, right? So we don't know if they will.
So
at
it's
some
the category
point
of human rights. It's
attain-
not the category of inductive or deductive reasoning.
No, it's the
Yeah?
category of human. Humans
bec-
belong
and why,
in the category
and the reason why you're saying
of,
the reason why you're
of
saying that.
sentient abilities of sentient species that are capable of argumentation.
Yeah, and the reason why you're saying that. So, but these people aren't. They're outside of that category now, right? You're just assigning them to that category because it works better for you. They don't have those properties, so they're no longer within those categories, right? It's like saying you discover a new species of fox, but the fox is fucking 4 foot tall, walks on 2 legs, and has no fur.
No. So the reason that they're in that category, and the same reason that children are in that category, or let's say the unborn are in that category, is that the entire species is capable of it. You're saying, but this individual,
But they're no
right,
longer capable of it.
regardless of being a member of the species, is currently incapable.
No,
Well, there's
will be
several
never
pro-
capable. Will never be
Oh,
capable.
well, how do you know that?
Pardon? They could be born without a brain.
Well, if they're born without a brain, they're dead, so they don't apply.
What
Not
if, what
even
if you
born
just
with
like
a
what if you
second
just
life.
bred
Dead
what if you just bred a
They
type
could-
of human that just was a vegetable, right? You bred them for meat, right? So they were never they never had the
Or you could
ability
breed them
think.
you could breed them to have the same intelligence as animals. I wouldn't even say vegetable,
Sure.
right?
Well, I'm not really concerned with intelligence quotient or G factor, right? I'm concerned with are they capable of argumentation?
Yeah, so they're not. They have the same intelligence of like a puppy. They like bark. They were just born that way, and they just have like
Okay,
they
yeah.
appear to be.
They're
Yeah.
not just born that way. I'm intentionally making them that way. Okay.
Take it.
Because I'd really like to eat humans.
Right, but it's a human. Human belongs to the category of species that is capable
But
of
it doesn't have
argumentation.
it doesn't fall within your set of definers that would make a human, right? So it's no
That's-
longer in that
I
category.
said
It just
I
looks like a
never
human.
said that. You're just making up stuff at this point.
I mean,
The category
Like I
human
never
was
said that
defined
what
by-
makes a human.
Mhm.
I never said that the definitive property of human requires argumentation. Therefore, they're no longer human. I said that humans are capable of argumentation. Plenty
Yeah.
of humans choose not to engage in argumentation.
you
plenty of
said-
humans are criminals, right?
Mhm.
Like,
But you said
but that doesn't matter.
specifically
They
that
belong
they
in
no
that
longer
category.
that they're still in that category if they don't have that if they don't have that. So that isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about the category human, right? Like you
Right,
seem to be
they
failing
are
at any
part of the
point at
species
which
of
the
human.
trait that you state applied to humans would make it still immoral to eat them. Then your trait is not a trait, not a good trait. It's a failed trait. It's not actually the trait you're running on, right?
No, I don't know how many times I reiterate my position.
Okay, it seems like we're
Seems like you don't
we
care
are
about
we're,
Yeah,
we're
it
kind of
seems
stuck
like they
here.
just can't work through this. That's okay. It's fine.
Okay,
We're at a
all right.
standstill.
Yeah.
No,
If
I
I
just
can
say they're
just-
humans. Like it's
Uh,
that simple. They belong.
If
in
I
the
can
category.
just say one
Now they
thing,
belong in that category.
Amanda, then Lactoid.
if I can just say one thing, and perhaps maybe it'll be on deaf ears for the panel, but if you're looking for the pinpoint in human rights, it's the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen. It's 1789. It's a very important Western historical document, and that is the starting point of Western understanding of human rights. But you guys can continue this conversation, but for the chat, if you would like to
Prime's
know,
not gonna let me.
I don't even
Prime's
know
not gonna
where
let me.
the
It's
conversation
fine.
is Going.
Yeah,
all.
I would rather bring in some other people. Like Lactoid. Lactoid is going to say something amazing. Go ahead, Lactoid.
Yeah, a couple things. I would kill baby Hitler to save a million puppies. I'm sorry, Scott, I failed you. Amanda,
Fucking consequentialist.
I know.
At the end of the day.
I know. I'm killing baby Hitler. Amanda, something maybe to think about. Do you think that if that was never written, then human rights wouldn't exist even up till today? If I were to kill somebody, would that be wrong? And if it is wrong, why would it be wrong? Or how would it be wrong if we invent rights if they don't
Yes.
exist naturally?
Yes, the answer is yes.
So it would be wrong to kill a person even if we didn't
No,
invent rights yet.
I that the French Revolution, that document and everything that came afterwards is the reason why we understand what a nation state is. We understand what human rights are. It's the way that Western moved from a feudal system and kings and queens and having just subjects, and the way that we identified as people changed completely, because before that, when you had Western civilization, specifically in the United Kingdom, in Britain, when it was still just the British Kingdom, you were a subject of the king, and that's how you would if somebody asked you who you were, you would say, I'm a subject of King Henry, I'm a subject of this. But the French Revolution got to an understanding where those were the French people. It was inherent understanding and an inherent identity that changed and shifted in Western society afterwards. So you don't see as many monarchies to this day because the French Revolution was such an important idea that influenced Western society. All of the monarchies started to fall because before that you had
Lactoid,
the Hungarian
before you respond, I just want to, for Amanda, your thing's been dropping out a little bit. And which side of the coast are you on? Are you on the west coast or the east coast?
Toronto coast.
Toronto coast. Okay, so east. All right.
The Doug Ford coast. Awful
Okay,
coast.
so I just changed the server in Discord. Hopefully, that'll be helpful.
Long story short,
So
Amanda wants you to know that China is not doing anything wrong to the Uyghur Muslims
wait,
because
wait.
they don't come from a tradition of Western philosophy, and they say it's okay. And
Hold on.
it's just there's no human rights violations.
Lactoid.
That's what I think the issue is, right? Because I understand the historical analysis that you're putting forward, but I'm more asking you, because under this line of thought, it would seem that we would really have no justification to protect anybody's rights as long as we don't recognize it as a right in the first place, right? Before we outlawed slavery, was slavery wrong? And how could it be wrong if we never gave rights to black people to begin with?
I mean, what's the difference between a right not enforced and a right? and like that just exists, like a right that exists and
Well,
isn't
because
enforced,
because
or a right
one
that
mo
doesn't exist and isn't enforced.
right, because one justifies action and one doesn't, right? When there's a
But it's
right
not
that
being enforced. It
so
doesn't
right,
matter. There's no
well,
functional difference.
hold on, hold on. So if there's a right that exists but it's not being enforced, this justifies action. Well, we have to step in and enforce this right because this person has a right that's being trampled on. Under this logic of, as long as it's not enforced, it doesn't actually exist as a right. There's no actual like reason why we have to help anybody with any sort of rights because they don't have the right to begin with. Technically, under this line of thought, slavery isn't wrong because we never gave Black people the right to be free. So how are you going to stand here and argue slavery is wrong if you never recognized freedom as a human right to begin with?
The very short
argue that
answer is this: might does not make right. Might makes reality.
I mean, well, this is
Exactly.
like the point I'm making is that if you're not enforcing it, like, what's the difference to the person who's enslaved, right? They were still enslaved. It doesn't matter. Like, if you're talking about like moral positions, right? The rights are separate from moral positions. I would argue, right? Rights are things that we construct within society, specifically by countries, right? To like bring citizens there and give citizens something. It's like some kind of like advertisement, right?
So I want to ask
rights
you
are
the
generally
same thing.
constructed and protected by laws.
I want to ask you the same thing that I asked Amanda then. Before the United States criminalized slavery of Black people, would you say that slavery was not wrong because we never gave Black people that right?
I would argue that it's wrong on a moral basis, but I wouldn't say it's out of any kind of right, right?
So when you say it's wrong, like, isn't that mean like if something is wrong, that means it's antithetical to a right?
No,
by almost by definition. So what does it mean to be wrong if it's not violating a right?
It's like so in the US, right? You have like a freedom. Oh wait, no, Amanda, go. Sorry.
Sorry, everything got cut off. Let me know if I have technical more.
So you're okay. I'm just lagging because I'm from Australia.
Okay. As far as it goes, no, definitely I'm gonna be on the bandwagon that slavery has always been wrong, but I would say up until this point, it's because I would say on a personal level, that's how I feel about it. And that comes from more of a personal ethics and probably my connection to religion that has existed. But like those things in French Revolution, American Revolution, church was always supposed to be important as separate. When I make these analysis, I'm talking about like the understanding of history. And in the case, when you look at rights, like I do think we should have rights, but I think I spent many years not eating meat. I ate not meat tonight for dinner, but it makes me still think about the fact that like when we have a conversation about rights, we still never acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of people in the world who's human beings that don't have them still. So in that sense, why are we going like to this other like extreme when it comes to the conversation of rights when there's like people in the developing world, there's people everywhere who would love to just like be able to vote, drive a car, like basic rights that we take for granted. So
voting is not a right.
So I'm
inherently contradictory to rights.
I want to point out something real quick. I'm actually somewhat surprised that you and specifically Kaio-san is making this argument because this would seem to contradict or at least weaken his position on veganism, right? Because you're saying that animals have some kind of rights that we have to respect. That's why it's wrong to kill and eat them. So, but if we'd say, okay, they don't have rights because, we decided as a country they don't have rights, then we're not violating their rights by killing and eating them because they don't have any. True?
So I would like I said, like maybe we're just like equivocating on a position, like in terms of words. Like maybe I'm using right differently to you, which could be the case. But like I said,
my
like,
definition's better. Let's go with
but I would say that, like in the US, you have like a right to bear arms. Like this is like a right that's written into your constitution. It's like very deeply inscribed in the culture of your people too. Like it's not something like. Would you agree that like a right to firearms is a right?
Well, the Second Amendment actually doesn't give the right. It says the pre-existing right shall not be infringed. That's what it states.
Right. Okay. It recognizes from the Lockean proviso that human beings objectively have rights. And so objective rights are enshrined in the United States Constitution.
Absolutely.
I'll use another example then that you might agree.
How did you have a right to firearms before firearms existed?
It exists because of they were writing that based off of their understanding of the French Revolution, which had just happened. There was a context to that.
Well, it was informed. Well, so wait, hold on. Didn't the French Revolution happen after? Am I getting that wrong?
No, before.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Revolution's very long ago.
There was multiple.
say,
I
like,
don't,
the
I don't remember
other-
which fucking one they're talking about. It was
Well, use like a limited. Yeah.
1789. Great time.
I would say that like then the right to healthcare, right? The UN like prescribes a right to healthcare in their like Bill of Rights. Libertarians would generally argue with this being a right. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not a right.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have
yeah.
a right to someone
So-
else's body or someone else's labor.
It's a privilege.
So as I was saying,
True.
like in general, different places, right? We set up different rights, and these aren't like necessarily inalienable. They're generally used as constructions for citizens to be like leveraged, right? I would say there are moral imperatives. I would say there are moral goods and moral bads, but I wouldn't like. And to the point before, and I'm going to weaken my own position to people who don't know what I'm talking about. But I will say that like I'm like an anti-realist. I'm like someone, the position that people might know it as is like error theory. Doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong or it doesn't exist. It's just a category error. But that I would say that there is something there, like you're going to hate this, a consequentialist position, but it is something about people's preferences that would make these things right or wrong, right? And that animals don't have like the animal preferences aren't worth more or less than a human's. There doesn't seem to be any trait that we can apply that would distinct those two things. That would make one more like worthy of moral consideration than another.
I want to bring this back. I want to bring this back to the topic at hand because
I have a point on the topic at hand.
You don't have to say you're not a moral agent. I can eat you. Like
okay. So Lactoid, go ahead, and then I'd love to hear from Corey.
So I just want to like ask everybody here who is in favor of the taxes. Instead of increasing taxes, wouldn't you agree that we should just remove the subsidies? Because otherwise, if we subsidize them and then tax them on top, like, and then just take the money back, all we're doing is just involving the government in like money in, money out, when we don't necessarily have to have them involved at all, right? We should just.
So it might be the case that we have like, and I don't disagree, like I said, like, but you probably need to ease off the subsidies. You can't just like yoink people's food source, make it $35 a kilo tomorrow, and then expect to have like the supply structures in place and infrastructure and all these things to meet up with people's new food demands or that wouldn't cause issues. Like I think like a tax isn't a bad way to do it. And also you can use those taxes in other certain areas. Like say it could be the case that that you want to tax like a certain other thing that you're using this tax for, that it covers that as well. Like I haven't like super like delved on the law and like read every like piece of the fucking legislation on it, but there's a reason why we might use this in place of just
every
removing the
removal.
wholesale.
Every removal of a tax subsidy is further theft, right? So if you remove the answer is to bring those tax subsidies to the rest of the economy, not to increase taxation and increase theft. Right? So just because the government is affording special privilege by not committing an act of aggression and theft from one category of the economy doesn't mean that we should get rid of that and increase aggression and theft as a means of balancing.
Let's try Corey. And then I want to hear from Doobie, because Doobie said the opposite. Doobie was fine with the taxes. I want to hear from him as well. But first, our friend Corey Campbell is back with us. Thanks so much, friend. We're on the New Zealand topic.
Oh, okay, I was going to say, like,
right.
What did I thought we were talking about Bezos as topic about.
Yes, we talked about Bezos, and then somehow, some way, we talked about eating animals, eating the rich. Eating the rich, and then
started with a cow for us.
yeah.
With topic 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair. Yeah. No, I'm all. Like, if you want to argue veganism, I'm all for. I mean, Lactoid knows. I'll argue with them all day.
Fuck, another one. Go ahead.
Yeah. But okay. So for on the second topic, with the New Zealand and the taxation, like I'm all in favor of whatever reduces consumption or like reduces animal agriculture. Like thumbs up for me. I think I would say that's probably paying the true cost or more reflective of the true cost of animal agriculture. Whereas like there are other, it's not just like whatever the piece of flesh that needs to be taken into consideration, but like all of the consequences and whatever collateral damage that it causes. And that's why I'm also for removing subsidies to animal agriculture, because like people should be paying. Not that I would advocate for it, but like if you want to pay for it, like you should be paying like the true cost and to the cost to society or the globe at large.
Okay. Thank you for that, Doobie. I'm really curious as to your thoughts because you disagreed with everyone, really.
I just think the framing that Scott put forward earlier is really interesting. How they're like, yeah, it's not going to stop here. This is like step one, and then they're eventually trying to get you to eat bugs or whatever the fuck. Um, but I think that's like the framing of that is strange because of what I would see it as is, hey, we understand that there's an issue. This is contributing to that issue, so we need to move away from it. But instead of just yanking the rug out from under you overnight, we're going to slowly ease the new way in, right? Which I think seems totally reasonable. I don't know why we would put a scary spin on that. So yeah, I'm in favor of it. Obviously, I don't really have an issue with removing the subsidies or increase. I don't actually. I agree with Blackwood. It doesn't make sense to tax them more if you're subsidizing them. Just remove the subsidies slowly over time. That seems to make more sense.
Can I ask you a
Of
question, Doobie?
course.
So, how many people should starve from increased food prices so that the government-run programs can research outside of the marketplace solutions for climate change?
I don't think any people need to start for that. I think there's plenty of food to go around
That's-
because I'm advocating for doing this slowly over time. There's no reason to
Yeah,
jump to like
no.
an end of the world situation where the fucking planet's starving because we stopped eating cows.
No.
Right? Like,
How many
let's be
people? Right?
reasonable.
I'm not saying the world's going to end. I'm just saying,
No
like,
people.
as
If
you.
people are lacking food, you send them food.
Okay, well then
That's
why are you why are
That's
you
a
supporting
ridiculous slippery slope
increased
fallacy.
regulation and taxation
I have a question on
on
that vein.
farmers, right? As a means of spending those resources towards research for better farming practices,
It's not just
knowing
that.
that the farmers themselves have stated that they will stop working in that industry. Like
Sure,
they've stated,
maybe
if
they
I
can.
do this, I won't
Okay.
be able to afford to do it, which means less food production, higher food prices, and less food to go around, and people will invariably
What
starve.
happens when what happens when there's an increase in demand in the market, Scott?
What do you
Prices-
mean? What happens when, like,
Yeah,
in
prices
what
go up,
specific
right?
market? Yeah.
When in any market, right? You're a libertarian. I'm going to ask you, what happens when demand goes up, price go up, right? What happens when
I mean,
prices
it depends
go up
upon the.
and a
It
good
depends,
has a
it
low?
depends upon the.
What happens when a
Depends upon
good?
the elasticity of the price, right? Like,
Okay,
you
cool.
don't
And then what
invariably know
happens
that
when prices go up and the goods are low entry? What happens then?
Okay. Yes.
Has a low barrier of
Obviously,
entry to the market.
okay, but again, you don't know the elasticity of the product that we're speaking about. Number one, so you don't necessarily know, but like, yes, some level of some level of demand increase will, of course, increase price, right? Some
Mhm.
some level of restricted supply will increase price.
And then what happens from there?
In a free market, without governments, in a
Without
free market,
governments.
right. In a free market, you're likely to incentivize additional players to come into the market
Yeah.
to balance out.
Yeah.
We
So
don't
when
have
like
a
meat
free
goes
market.
out of the
We have a
market,
regulated market. You've
Yep.
created a price floor. Or sorry, well, not really a price floor. I guess you
I
have
was gonna
created a
say-
price floor. You've created a price floor with the additional
because
regulations.
there's a low agriculture is one of the lowest barrier to entries industries to come into, right? Like this isn't like you're coming into a telco market where the barrier to entry is so incredibly high that you're going to create both
Yeah,
an
sure.
alien, right?
Sure, but it depends. But it depends upon like your efficiency and in the ability to meet production demands, right? So, like, yeah,
Mhm.
there's a really low barrier to entry. Let's say in India, if you're willing to use public seeds to make rice, but that doesn't mean that you're going to make enough rice to be profitable when like Bill Gates is shilling his fucking IP protected seeds, right? Sure, you can say that there's a low barrier to entry, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be profitable. And that especially like there's a lot of factors at play here. Once
But
the
people will
government
come in
regulations
and
take
just
some-
like, but people will come in and just make more food. It's not like the
No.
meat goes and then there's no more food. Like the people stop producing meat
you
and then the production of
in-
food just stops.
if you increase the cost of production arbitrarily, right?
It's not
then there's no
arbitrarily. You're just removing
guarantee.
something, giving people.
Well, no, additional taxation, right, would be an arbitrary
Well,
increase
removal
in
of
production.
subsidies would be the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, but removal
And
of
you should be in
subsidies would
favor of removal of
additional
subsidies.
taxation, which is an
Well, let's
increase
ignore the
to
additional
cost of
taxation. We're just talking
productivity.
about the cost here. We're talking about the cost. Let's ignore the taxation. Let's just say we're removing the subsidies, right? You're removing the government being involved in the market. Yeah?
If you're removing no, that's a lie. If you're removing subsidies, that means you're choosing to increase taxation.
So
You're not
you're
increasing
okay. You're okay
taxation
with
by choosing not to
people-
give someone money.
Yeah, you're okay with.
Wait, can you
them
explain
giving
that,
my money
Scott?
away, right? You're giving.
Like,
you're
okay,
with
if,
them
if
giving my
everyone
money
if everyone in the
away?
world is taxed at 10%, right? And you, Lactoid, for whatever reason, are taxed at 5%, right? yes, you are given an unfair advantage in the market, but everyone is already being punished. The market is already being stolen from, and all of the goods and services in the entirety of the market are artificially raised in price because of the theft of the state. Now,
So
if I
we should keep
remove
stealing from
if-
people and
right
giving it to
now,
other
if you
people.
lactoid, right now you lactoid, you have an advantage in this stolen from market where everyone's being taxed higher than you. If I bring you to the balance of everyone else, that is not reducing the theft. That's not reducing taxation.
We're
That's
not
not
increasing
that's not
taxation.
doing something right. You are increasing taxation because lactoid was previously at 5%, and then you bumped him up to 10%. So it's
In
an
this
increase
instance,
in
we're not
taxes
talking about
on
increasing
him.
taxes. We're not talking about
If
increasing
you
taxes. We're talking
remove
about like money
subsidies,
that's
that
given
is
out to
increasing
people.
taxation.
Are you
You
okay?
would
wi-
reduce
are you
welfare,
okay with
right?
somebody being
Wait,
taxed?
wait,
Are
wait,
you
wait,
okay with
wait,
an
hold on,
individual
hold on.
being
Wait,
taxed
Fabian,
for those
you're
subsidies?
for removing welfare,
Subs-
right?
Yes, I'm for removing.
Then how the
state-based
fuck
welfare.
is this any different?
Yeah, this
What
is
do you
something.
mean? I'm explaining how it's different.
I must be.
Subsidies are welfare.
I must be missing something. I must be missing something.
No, they're
So-
not.
so, Scott-
Subsidies are reduced theft to a specific group of people. That's not the same thing as wealth redistribution.
Lactoid, you can go. And
So
then
welfare.
Jason is supposed to go, and Amanda, I see you. You
No,
look
it's
like
not,
you
because
have something to
welfare
add.
is-
Those individuals,
welfare
Uh,
is
most
so
welfare- most of
Lactoid,
the welfare that
Lactoid.
isn't called welfare goes to people with a marginal propensity to
let's
consume
make room for
above
Swedish
one.
people, please.
So,
Lactoid.
Yeah, our people.
Marginalized
repressed.
Yeah.
Scott, so is it fair to say then the position you're arguing, which is interesting, is that anybody who is stolen from at like some substantive amount, giving them money is not actually a subsidy or like bad. It's just reducing their taxation. So like you'd be in favor of giving people Social Security as long as they paid in a certain amount.
No,
Even
we're
if
talking
they-
about tax subsidies, which is saying instead of you paying 10%, when you go do your taxes at the end of the year, you have a $4,000 subsidy credit.
Oh,
Therefore,
okay.
you're being stolen from less.
Sure.
You're getting a direct check, right? And you're
Yeah.
being taxed, right? Then that's just layers of inefficiency and stupidity.
Right. So, but what we're talking about here is that for farmers in the U.S., like for every like certain unit of corn you sell, you get a like direct check from the government. Like they directly subsidize the production of your food. It's not just like you get right
Right.
off your taxes. So in that, like that, you would be opposed to, right? Just get rid of those.
Right. I would be
direct checks.
opposed. I would be opposed to writing a check to a farmer.
Great.
I'm talking
Okay.
about a subsidy where you have a tax subsidy. If you're talking
So
about
if we
just
did the
direct
entire
payment
welfare system,
for something,
so if we did the entire welfare system through the tax system, right, and we made them all like tax advantage credits, like the family tax advantage credit. Like I'm sure you're like advantage. I'm sure you're in favor of like Biden's expansion of the family tax advantage credit, right?
if no government funds are given and it simply reduces their tax burden to zero, I'm all for it because that's just less taxation.
And that is the case in the U.S.
Step
for
in the
like
right
a lot of people, right?
But
Most people
if-
get
if
more
a
Most,
back.
tax
most
subsidy
welfare is
brings
done
you
through the
into a-
tax system. It's why it's so
If-
bad.
Right, but if you're given
Corporate
additional
welfare is the
funds,
biggest welfare.
Okay,
right,
that makes sense.
that's
Yeah.
different. Yes, corporate welfare is the biggest one.
Right. So Kaio-san, what he's saying is that like, if I'm paying $1,000 per year in taxes, obviously getting 750 knocked off, that's like a good thing because I'm getting less of my money stolen, right? But if I'm paying like $250 in taxes and I'm getting like $1,000 per year in welfare, well, now I'm taking like I'm being given stolen goods in the roughly in the amount of $750 per year.
So if everyone gets taxed at 100%, right, and then we just do everything as subsidies, this is like okay for libertarians.
No, because
No.
you increase taxes in order to institute this.
No, but the tax is
like,
already. Let's just say
no,
like there's a
Kyo-san,
world that exists.
Kyo-san,
Let's just say a
Kyo-san,
world exists where
Kyo-san,
it's all with all tax.
How often are you going to straw man and interrupt with stupid?
Because I think it's really because I think this is really
it's
poor
really
reasoning. That's
fucking
why.
simple. It's
You
really
pointed
fucking
out-
simple.
he also
Stealing
pointed out
is
that-
bad. Less stealing, good. It's not that fucking complicated.
Yeah, not to
What were you
mention you
saying,
said taxing 100% out of people with that amount of taxation. No, like the middle low class is not going to have no money at all to even.
I'm not gonna
just-
work.
Yeah, so the point I'm saying here is that like let's invent a society. This is what I'm going to do from now on. Right? I'm going to go start a new country and I'm going to tax everyone 100%. Libertarians will hate it, right? But every time I increase welfare, libertarians are going to fucking love it because I'm like reducing tax burden or whatever.
No, I think you're
Right?
missing
What?
it.
That's-
You're
that's-
missing.
That's
No, you're just straw manning to make memes because you can't deal with libertarian
So
arguments.
I will reiterate your position to you, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, right? That you feel that like all tax is theft, right? So everything from that 50
Yes.
to 30%, right? And any reduction of that theft is a good thing, right? Because you believe that like there's a moral imperative to not steal. You would just say we have like a Kantian position where stealing is bad and not stealing is good, and less stealing is bad.
I wouldn't say
stealing
it's
is
a
good,
Kantian
correct?
position, but other than that, yes.
It's less bad because there's less stealing. It's not
Yeah.
good that you're
Right.
taking anything.
Right. So as long
Like,
as people's welfare burden,
they're both
Mhm.
immoral, right? But
so
if
as long
we're-
as
but if we're
people's
moving-
lifetime welfare burden,
once they're
Mhm.
both unjustifiable positions, right? And so
Right.
now that I'm forced to choose between a rock and a hard place, I will tactically choose the position that moves us in a direction of being justifiable, which is the lack of theft.
that's fine. So we're talking about people's like lifetime tax burden versus people's lifetime burden that they get back, right, from the government. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
We're talking about people's lifetime tax burden versus people's lifetime offset subsidies, correct? And that if that subsidy number is to increase versus that tax burden, that increase is preferable. Yes, because there is less stealing.
Are you talking about like I'm trying to gauge what it is that you're
So people
actually
pay
saying.
a certain amount in tax over their
Apologize.
lifetime. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
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 And people will get back some of that in tax, but via offsets, right? So say like I have a novated lease on a car, and that's me getting money back from what I paid into taxes, correct?
Oh, sure.
And that would be a good thing because I'm getting
if you have
money
a
back. It's
credit-
less stealing.
It's not getting money back. That's not what I'm talking about. I've already made this differentiation.
It's when I say
So,
getting money
like
back, it's the
Social
difference between the
Security,
tax
for
you would have paid
example.
and the tax that you're paying, right?
Right. Okay. Yes. If you are reducing the tax burden for a specific credit, like then that is less theft overall. Yes.
Okay, cool. So as long as my lifetime tax burden is larger than the difference that I have to pay, right? So if I'm given some subsidy or some offset or something in that derivative, right? This would be a good thing, and increasing that offset would be a good thing. Correct?
It would not be a good thing to hand out checks from your own stolen money.
So
What's the distinction between writing it in as a tax down and writing it in as a
so
direct check?
I wanna let in
It's very
Jason
simple
here.
because
Look,
it's
the
very- I'll finish up and I'll be super quick. It's very simple.
okay.
When you're writing a check, right? You had to steal that money to justify writing that check, and it's going through an entire process of stealing money from people, and then all of the programs that cost money so that a reduced amount is sent to you, right? Whereas the way to solve that crime is to stop stealing the money in the first place.
Let's go to Jason Society. The siren song of the ANCAP is as strong as ever.
I can watch that. Like your expression, Prime, is like really entertaining. Like it's like I'm seeing the soul leave from your body in real time.
I was
Like-
trying to make the argument. I was trying to make the ANCAP
I
argument
mean-
for welfare here, Prime, okay?
Yeah.
Because everyone pays way more in taxes over
I-
their lifetime than they do
No.
receiving welfare.
I know.
It's not true.
No, no.
He-
Oh, that's not true for
It's
everybody.
absolutely
He
the case.
is.
Not
He
it.
is.
It's not
Scott.
absolutely the case.
Scott.
That can't be true, actually.
Scott's
Dude,
words.
all I was trying to say is
Oh, God.
stealing's bad, and like
Yeah,
people
sure.
wanna get into
Okay, we're moving
complicated-
on. We're moving on. Scott's words are as seductive as always. Let's go to Jason. Jason, please don't address Scott. Let's do us a favor. Please say something to address Scott.
No, I mean here's the thing. Like the reason that countries tend to put in like taxes and stuff like this to fund research is because these industries don't like to do it on their own. Why don't they like to do it on their own? Because it costs them fucking money. So they have to tax these industries on this shit to get them to curb their practices. And then through them doing that, they can use that for research to address the issue and hopefully maintain the same level of production. But right now, and as always, a corporation looks out for one thing, and that's their bottom line. And that's because that is their sole responsibility, is to look after their bottom line. And to think that they are going to police themselves, we've done this over and over and over and over and over and over a fucking again, and it never fucking works. Show me a time where an industry policed itself and it actually works and they didn't need any kind of government intervention in order to police themselves. Once.
It's a moral imperative and a good thing that a corporation focuses on profit. That is the sole responsibility, and that is the highest moral value that one can attain to.
Correct. All right. So then in order for them to stay moral in what they're trying to do, they need a regulator in place so that they have some kind of plausible deniability and being able to say, hey, listen, I know that
I
this is
agree.
the immoral imperative for our corporation, but the government, the big bad government, is saying we have to do X, Y, and Z. So there you have it.
No, you're right.
There's,
You're absolutely
there's your
right.
way out for
The
your
moral,
corporation to do the
right, so
right fucking thing and be able to use the government as an out for it.
you're right until you say that the government is the only possible regulator, right? You can use the market as a regulator as well. The problem is that you prefer a corrupt monopoly to have the right towards regulation and to be able to make the rules and to be able to use aggression and theft as a means of regulation.
There are
So
no
you're for
corporate corrupt.
aggression,
There are no
theft,
corrupt
and
corporate
corrupt monopoly.
monopolies. Are you fucking kidding me? There are no corrupt corporate monopolies. Is that what you're saying?
Scott, if
I
you
never
want to
said
win
that there was no
you're
no
gonna-
corrupt corporate monopolies, but I mean, I would say it wouldn't be a true monopoly. It would be monopolistic competition, but nevertheless.
you're gonna need
So-
some better marketing if you want this whole libertarian thing to work. I think you're gonna need to change up your messaging a little bit. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know.
see, I don't do this weird tactic where like I try and honey my words with falsities and lies as a means
no.
of like being able to argue. I say philosophically consistent in principle. That's what I do. People don't
That's
like
why
hearing
I
it.
said you've been
but
agreeing
eventually
with
the
it.
philosophically
strength of-
inconsistent this entire time. to be clear.
Obsession
And
with
that's- and
obsession with
okay.
To add that in with
nice claim, Kyo-san, but you got nothing to back it up.
To add that in
I've
with
been
Jason-
proving
what
it this
Jason's
whole
saying,
time.
Okay, you say the government is going to regulate these big corporations that are so bad, right? So who's regulating the state that's putting forth all these other policies that's going to hurt the middle and low class, and they have been doing it for decades? Who's regulating them?
Well, that's our job as a people.
That's
That's
what an
why we
election
become
is.
elected
But-
officials. That's what elections are for. That's what
It's the thing,
referendums are for.
right.
That's what
But the
all of
average
the things
American
you go to the
knows what to
polls
do,
for
yeah.
is for.
Elections
That's exactly what it's
don't
for.
matter though if the establishment state wants to keep themselves in power. Prime example: if they have had put forth all these policies that they have been putting not policies, all these promises that they have been putting in place in order to get your vote. Prime example: the whole freaking we gonna cancel all this freaking student loan debt.
They did.
And yeah, news came out. It was unconstitutional, and now a lot more people still had to pay a lot more money. So that was a broken promise right there. So who's actually regulating them for making all these promises for just simply a vote and not actually holding to the end of the bargain?
Well, I
We
mean, I
do
think that's
It's
why
bribery, by the way. It's like retroactive
feel-
bribery.
Right?
I feel
So
like people always just go into this position where they decide that like you vote and then that's it. Like you put in your little ballot and then like you forget about politics for 4 years unless it's super spicy on one of the like fancy news channels. But at the end of the day, like the reality is if you want to like keep this stuff afloat, you have to be like checking in on your representatives and everybody in your community and see how it's being represented constantly. And the problem is sometimes those things are really boring. Like sometimes those aren't spicy Wolf Blitzer reports in the Situation Room or whatever the heck. Like sometimes it's just like super boring, super trivial. But like politics, like it's not just a every 4 years kind of thing. It's a consistent thing.
Yeah, but that just slows down the rate of corruption. Like that doesn't actually solve anything. Like if we look at the FDA, right?
Don't
this
you
is an
want to
example-
slow down the rate of corruption? Isn't that advantageous for people?
The word
Sure,
corruption
I mean,
is not gonna
sure,
slow down
but I
if
mean,
you
but-
constantly vote for it. You constantly vote for corruption because they bring forth all these promises that are just not going to be fulfilled. So how is it being slowed down if people are just going to keep voting for it, and then the establishment is just going to keep on bringing people in?
Michael Malice has a great thing that he says all the time, which is just conservatives or progressives running the speed limit. You know what I mean? Like it's not, you're not actually helping the situation. You're just slowing down the bad situation. So as an example, right? So this is why I'm against corrupt monopolies, as opposed to leftists that like monopolies. And so the monopolies that leftists like are things like the FDA, right? The problem with the FDA is completely fucking corrupt, right? They have very few individuals that actually go into research labs and clinical trials. They mostly just take the data from these large corporations that, oh, by the way, give them hundreds of millions of dollars so that they can investigate them as well, and have a revolving door of individuals that work at the FDA and then work for these corporations. So they know they can't, do anything too bad. Oh, and by the way, nearly a third of all products that the FDA has a label approval for end up having to be recalled because they're dangerous. What I'm simply saying is, if you want
Scott
proper
thinking that we should give teeth to the FDA. We should absolutely
want-
have more FDA soldiers walking into every fucking business, marching in lockstep.
Right.
Like, you
And
should
that-
hear
and
the
that's-
stomp
and
of
that's-
the FDA
that's
and
the
the IRA
stupidity.
coming from miles away, coming in to regulate your business.
Stupidity of the leftists. That's the stupidity of the leftists that thinks if only we vote harder, if only we give them more money.
That's just
if
the
only
point
have
you were
more
making,
theft,
though, is that they
it'll
didn't have
fix
enough
the
teeth.
problem. No, it's not.
I don't think
making.
that's
What I'm
necessarily
saying is-
correct, because I think
you
the
have a-
people that a
you
lot of
have a- no,
leftists
you have
want to
a-
vote
you
in
have a
do not
fa-
agree
you
with
have a
what the FDA has
fascist
been doing, do not
organization.
agree with the revolving door. I contend that, as a matter of fact, leftists don't agree with any of that. Leftists would like to see people in office that would like to make significant change. Leftists talk about getting money out of politics. There's a reason for that, because we would like it to be for and by the
name
people.
me one big
Yeah,
leftist
vote harder,
that-
give them
that's-
more
that's
money,
talking
and
about
we'll
taking
support
money
the
away from
FDA.
the government.
We'll just clean it. It won't be a problem once it has
Well,
more power.
so-
Like the bad
Okay.
people will be fixed once it has more power. But the fact of the matter is that if you had companies and you just gave us the right to take whatever medication we wanted, there would be a market void, and there would be companies that would do things that the FDA is doing, and they would research things. They would go to doctors and say, these are things that are acceptable, these are things that are
Are
unacceptable.
you kidding
have a
me? These
competition.
guys make
It'd be better
profit
regulation than
Cor-
the
These
FDA.
guys are making record-breaking profits, hand over fucking fist.
Yes,
and they
because
don't
you have a
do it now.
monopoly.
They don't do it now.
Corey-
They should be
Because you
doing it
want
now. They
a
have the
monopoly.
money to do it right
Because you're
fucking
the
now, and
corrupt
they don't do it.
motherfucker
Cor-
that wants
Corey.
a monopoly that allows them to buy them.
Corey,
You're
Corey,
the bad guy.
say something wholesome.
I got nothing. Sorry. Other than I love you all, regardless of what's going on. But so Scott, to hopefully understand your position better, because we've sort of talked about this previously, where it's like my initial understanding is like, I understand you probably want to get rid of the FDA, or like basically, do you want to get rid of the FDA, or do you want like multiple type FDAs competing, and then whatever one like wins out is like the good FDA?
I want the market to be free. Once the FDA is gone, there's a market void for
Oh,
companies to
yeah.
fill the role that the FDA fills.
Right. So
Without
then,
theft, aggression, and a monopolistic ability where the incentives lean towards corruption.
okay. So like, I would ask you the same question that I think you asked to Doobie, that I think is like maybe, not the most honest framing of like, so how many babies have to die while once the competition like plays out itself, in terms of like, you just let all pharmaceuticals like do whatever. You have multiple thalidomide cases, over and over, and then eventually the market will, correct itself and course correct. So like, how many cycles, how many babies and deformities have to pile up before we're in.
People are already dying under the genocidal organization of the FDA. Or did you forget about the AIDS epidemic, where gay people were not allowed to get life-saving medicine because the FDA didn't want to save them, because they were okay with the gay people dying.
So Doobie
They
could
just
have
wanted
said
to
like,
push fucking cancerous rates of AZT on them and wouldn't let them have basic things like fucking vitamins. They're already dying under the FDA.
I don't think anyone's making the argument the FDA is a perfect agency, but there are clear instances of the FDA doing a good thing, especially like in the United States. I've brought up this example multiple times of Francis Oldham Keys, a Canadian, if I remember correctly, where it's like, they explicitly blocked the approval of thalidomide in the United States because they followed the science, and they arguably prevented what happened in Europe in thalidomide from not happening in the United States. And now, if you want to call that the outlier, I guess fair enough. But like, there are clear cases where the FDA is doing its job. Are there clear cases where the FDA is not doing its job and doing it poorly? Absolutely. But I don't think it's like this categorical, like, evil, corrupt institution.
No, it's specifically designed to stop us from being able to take medication that we want to take. That is evil. That is aggression. There's no way around it.
Same with the ATF, yeah.
I would ask you then the question of like, so do you think any parent should have the right to administer whatever to the child, or even like withhold any medication from their child?
It depends on the medication. Like it depends on the context of the situation, whether or not it's child abuse.
Right, but the FDA has like certain regulations, especially when it comes to like administering medications to children. Like, we enforce these things because, like, unfortunately, some parents don't have their children's best interests like in mind.
The parent has the custodial right of guardianship over the children as a default, because the mother homesteaded the child. right? The mother gave birth to the child, and so therefore they have the default right of that guardianship. The child is an emergent adult with their own rights. So if you permanently damage said child, then the child can be taken from you. You can go to court. You can take that away. There's a form of neglect. If you are doing things that are unreasonable that cause harm to the children, they can be taken away from you. So thus the incentive structure is that parents should obviously, that love their children, want to take care of their children. So you don't, child abuse occurs whether or not it's illegal, right? Like Munchausen's by proxy is a thing.
Sure.
The question here is a reasonable parent using the resources available to them to give the best medication to their children? And in a free market that is better regulated by the market, more parents will be able to do that. So the question is, why do you want parents giving drugs that are dangerous that happen to be FDA approved, like almost 1/3 of them, because of the inefficiencies of the corrupt government monopoly?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but so then I would just attempt to ask a clarifying question, because like not every single sort of like whatever medication or substance like it has great provable harm. Like, are you okay with, for example, like a parent like just giving their 2-year-old whatever a shot of vodka, and there's no permanent harm in that?
Yeah, there is.
Yes, there
None.
is.
Right?
No, there's
Yeah, there is.
it
Yes,
would be
there
hard.
is.
No, there. If you want to have this conversation, like we can, but that'd be exceptionally difficult to quantitate or quantify. Whatever you can even like tone it down of like whatever half a shot of vodka. Like what damage is going to come from that? What about half a cigarette? Is that okay?
Yeah, there's some damage there.
There's
Yeah,
some
it's-
damage.
no,
there.
what-
It might
so-
be difficult to
And no
quantify.
benefit.
So if you're a grandparent, right, and you want to take care of the child, and the child is being clearly abused, as you're showing, because they're giving them shots of vodka and cigarettes, and it's a 2-year-old, right? Then you sue for custody. Like it's not like, what are you talking
Who
about?
sues for custody?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, so like
Does
that's the thing.
Anybody
grandparent-
sue for custody?
I just mentioned that
The
that vodka
grandparent
could mess up the child's
actually
system.
anybody can sue for custody if they're willing to take over the guardianship of the child and the child is being abused.
Anybody
This has
anywhere can just
nothing
sue
to
for
do with
custody. That's how it
cow
works, right?
It has nothing to do with
I'm more than
cow
happy to
farts.
talk
You guys,
about
like,
cow farts.
you know what I mean? Like, but I'm just proving the
just-
harm that is done by the state
Once
I
again,
don't know.
over and over again.
once again, the only person here who can resist the siren song of the ANCAP is my friend Doobie. He's the only one.
Well, probably know he's walked away from his computer. Like,
No, I'm here.
It's-
Just letting you guys